We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is the Friday edition, known as the Friday FARcast. And on Fridays, we sit down with people that are artists, visionaries, radicals, rebels, deep thinkers, time travelers, reality probers, you name it. They're on here for 2 hours every Friday, and today is no exception. And normally we have two guests that split time between the first hour of the show and the second hour of the show. But today we have 4 guests splitting the first hour and the second hour. So we're going to be graced with the presence of 4 different people talking about their art and their creativity and how it has impacted their lives and the lives of other people. We get into a lot of heavy information and heavy material over the course of the week sometimes, and even on Fridays, and some of the topics we explore, pulling back the covers, so to speak, on the nightmare, on the global nightmare, and we also like to have people on the show that give us a sense of purpose, a sense of reason, a sense of affirmation, and a commitment to life. And creativity is one of those areas that I am highly invested in because I think it is the God spark within all of us. So today we're going to be joined by a pretty well-known astrologer. She's well-known enough to have her chart up on astro.com. I'm envious. We also happen to share the same birthday. That's Joyce Mason, and Joyce is the author of a new mystery. It's called The Crystal Ball, and it's a Micki Michaels Mystery. We're going to be talking about that book. We're going to talk about creativity and writing and get into a little bit of astrology just in a minute or two. And then we're going to be joined by, I think Roy's coming on after that, Roy Tiesler. And Roy is a friend, and he's also a fine artist. Roy was a pretty well-known painter in the New York scene back in the 90s. That was the time when Julian Schnabel and Basquiat and Keith Haring and all those cats were, really burning up the art scene and making a name and quite a living for themselves. Roy was there, and Roy's story is absolutely fascinating. And he's been in hibernation for a while. He's creating art again. You can find his painting, his latest painting. It's actually a computer rendering. He's using computer graphics now. It's on the show page. We'll talk with Roy about his art and about his story. It will be extremely interesting, trust me. And then we're going to have vocalist Julia Freon, and it's not Freon like what you put in your car to keep your air conditioning nice and cold, but Julia Free, and she will be on the show. And we'll be talking with her about how she overcame cancer, and not just a a particular kind of cancer, but a very specific kind of cancer, which seemed to be generational for her. And we'll listen to some of her music, and we'll talk about life as somebody who has transformed their physical condition. And then lastly, at the end of the show, Ken Goffman, a.k.a. Are You Sirius, will be on, and we're going to get into the MONDO project, the MONDO 2000 project, and he'll regale us with some stories from the heyday of MONDO 2000. All right, so let's not waste any more time here. Let's just get right into this. It's going to be a fast-paced 2 hours, and let's bring on Joyce Mason, and let's find out more about Micki Michaels and the crystal ball and how she's making what seems to be a bit of a transition in her life. We'll find out more about it. Here's Joyce. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, how are you, Robert?
Hey, I'm great today, and it's great to have you on. How are you doing over there in California?
I'm doing great. It's a very exciting week with the release of the book on Monday. So I'm very busy, but I feel very, very satisfied. This is a lifelong dream that I finally have my first novel in print.
That's really exciting stuff, Joyce. First of all, you know, you and I share the same birthday, right? You know that.
I know. I was so excited when I discovered that because you don't meet too many people born on our day. But in recent years, I've actually met a couple and another astrologer. So exciting.
And just real quickly, before we jump into Micki Michaels and the process and what this has been about for you, how do you deal with being a 29-degree Virgo? How do you handle that anoretic degree, Joyce?
Well, it's really interesting because, as you probably know, my blog is called The Radical Virgo, and I also have the Sun Square Uranus. So I sort of have had to accept somehow or another that rebel energy is also part of that Virgo energy, and I've had to take it to a new notch to, if you will, the more Uranian expression of it, which I think is to be the cosmic mother and the planetary healer, and that's pretty much how it's evolved for me over time, from the lesser evolved, nitpicky parts of Virgo to the part about service and giving to the planet, and certainly using my writing for healing.
Right. So this might dovetail nicely with our conversation about your novel. Being a Virgo theoretically would help you with things like proofreading and editing and all the kind of dirty work that goes into writing a novel, but also persistence and doing it on a daily basis and the discipline that's needed to write a novel. Can you speak to that a little bit, Joyce?
Oh, yeah, and it's complemented by Capricorn Moon. So the organization and the ability to get down into the nitpicky parts of things, I really have that. And I think that people who don't, I feel for, because the whole process of putting a book together is actually more editing than writing. In fact, by the time I was through getting the edits done to this, which seemed endless, I was sure gremlins got in at night and put in new mistakes. Edit became my new four-letter word. But at any rate, yes, I do feel that that's an astrological gift, actually, to have that, because there are many Virgos who are writers, and we don't just write, we are also good editors. So I love that part of it.
Absolutely.
And,
correct.
The other thing, if I can bring this up, it's kind of a parallel system, but in the Myers-Briggs, where you look at your introversion-extroversion scale, I'm 1 point into introvert. I'm a true introvert in that I get myself replenished through alone time and meditation and things like that. But I'm so close to being an extrovert, right on the fence, that I can do both things. I can have the discipline to sit in the chair and get the work done, but I also have the ability to go out and market it and do the things I have to do, the schmoozy things. So that, again, is a gift. And I have, planets in Libra that are in a row right after that. So I, again, have that ability to want to connect with people. And nowadays, since, you have to pretty much market your own book, if you don't have both, you don't do so well out there. I feel blessed.
It's true. You and I are a lot alike. I've got Moon, Mercury, and Venus all in Libra as well, following my Sun.
Uh-huh.
And I've had to just surrender to being the Virgo, and it's like, as much as I'd like to go out and have lots of nice meals and look good in clothes and hang out with really interesting people, I always seem to have to come back to the Virgo part of it.
Cool. Well, I love my Libra planets actually, but I am a Virgo. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you. Hey, let's talk about the novel. You released it, or you're going to be released just after Mercury has gone direct, still in the shadow, but moving forward. It is a mystery novel. Scorpio is a sign very much associated with mysteries. You have Chiron in Scorpio. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that was like to get into the mystery genre and how you were actually tapping into your Chiron during the process of this?
Sure, I'd love to talk about that. I have Jupiter in Scorpio as well, and I think you know my writing has a lot of humor in it, and humor as healing is one of the ways that I blend those two. And what I finally realized in the process of writing this book is that everything I write about is mystery. It's either the actual mystery genre or it's about the mysteries of life. I love delving deep into the mysteries and how we tick and how we work as human beings and how we interact with one another, and then bringing that up, and talking about the insights, and always with a little dollop of humor, to sort of ease the pain of some of the facts of life. And if you're into the Sabian symbols at all, my Jupiter in Scorpio is on the Sabian symbol, an X-ray. So you can see I love that penetrating look into everything. And Chiron's actually a character in the book. To talk a little bit about it, Micki Michaels is someone who's been practicing astrology. She's not at the moment. At the moment, she has an organization called the Immortalists Planet Earth Association, or IOPIA, and what they are is a longevity group, but they're also a group of people who it's a nonprofit, and they do a lot of good in the world. They're, again, those planetary healers. And the crystal ball is an outrageous costume party where IOPIA, or as I affectionately call them, the Right to Long Lifers, are celebrating their 25th anniversary at this costume ball. And there's a bad guy who wants to extort the secret of long life. And without giving away any spoilers, a lot of interesting things happen as they try to find out who he might be and if he's even there as one of the masked characters in the event. And during the course of the book, they show a movie about IOPIA's accomplishments over the last 25 years in various areas, such as health, social services, and so on. And Chiron is very much their patron saint and plays a part of the movie, and they talk about Chiron as being someone who, a myth that you can't understand what the Immortalists on Planet Earth Association do without understanding who he is and what he's all about. So one of my excitements about this book is that I not only get this thing about healing, and the message across about it, but I think that the book is so much fun and the party is so unique between the pages of the book that I feel it has the capacity to do one of those chironic things that's so important, which is to bridge between Uranus and Saturn. I think some people who aren't into metaphysics are going to really enjoy this book. So those are some of my excitements about it.
Well, you've actually done a lot of work on your own with the planet Chiron and have written 2 books, one online and one hardbound book. And you and I talked a little bit about, before the show, about the presence of Chiron and Pisces during our current milieu, and how you really think that this is the key to how we can sort of turn things around or find a meaningful existence here on the planet.
I do, and I think what's exciting about Chiron and Pisces is that we have a chance to do that in the arts, and that's why what you're doing today is so exciting to me. People love the arts. We have an opportunity to do all this visionary healing through what people resonate to, whether it's books, music, whether it's art, whatever form of artistry it is. And it really captures people. I mean, one way to think about it is the last time Chiron was in Pisces was in the 60s, and think of how much music changed the world. So this is a piece of it that I completely love, and I'm hoping that other astrologers who are also writers will consider doing things like I'm doing that isn't preaching to the choir. It's not talking just to astrologers, but integrating astrology through whatever they do. And it doesn't have to just be the arts, but I think music and books and all the things that we do, movies, films, they are so significant culturally that the more we can permeate those with that healing message, the more it has an opportunity to bring everyone together, which, of course, the sign of Pisces is all about.
And Pisces, Chiron and Pisces isn't just healing. I mean, we're going to get some form of healing with all of the signs, but
certainly
when it's in Pisces, it's very deep healing. It's soul healing. And so, I think
right.
we're talking about the collective soul as well here, aren't we?
Oh, I think so totally. And in my book, The Immortalists on Planet Earth Association, the immortal part talks about the immortal soul. And the idea of the organization is these are people who want to do good in the world. They want to join. They want to bring love and heal the planet. And they want to live as long as possible in a body that works as well as possible in order to do that. But they all know that at some point they will be joined again into the cosmic soup. And if I can bring up one concept here that I found really interesting is that the chironic wound we probably all share is when we incarnate. I mean, I can't recall. I mean, one of the rules of the game on Earth is your memory is blanked of what happened before you came here. And what I think goes on is that people incarnate on Earth, and all of a sudden they've been broken from that one cosmic soup that joins us all. And that chironic wound is like an abandonment. It's like losing your mother, your source, or whatever. And the game is for us to find our way back to that source. And that's a very Piscean state of soul oneness that I think the times are about.
Absolutely. And it has, of course, the personal reverberation, but it's also the mythological aspect where we look at, the fall from grace or the exodus out of Eden or whatever kind of cosmic or mythological diaspora that we've all been sort of put on this planet to deal with.
It's about realizing that the separation is actually an illusion and coming back to that feeling of being all joined together again, which is exciting to be a part of. And it's exciting to do it in a fun, playful way where I know people will be learning things while they're just kind of having a riot at this party. The party is full of people in outrageous costumes because the theme of the party is come as you will be in the future. So people are got up like one person is a Vulcan Martian. She has mixed heritage, and so she comes as a Vulcan Martian, and many other things that I won't mention because they'd be spoilers. But there are some very interesting ideas about how people would be in the future, and even through them, we get a glimpse of how people are evolving in their thinking and coming, more together about a cosmic and more galactic perspective.
Well, you bring up a great point about learning about certain things through the art of fiction. I remember reading Robert Anton Wilson and Tom Robbins and even Dan Brown, and they're playing with all these different kinds of concepts and bringing in all these sorts of symbols and multidisciplinary sorts of means, and all of a sudden became interested in other things as a result of reading their books. So I think it's great that you're bringing astrology and incorporating it into fiction so that people might get more interested in learning about astrology. How much of a balance did you have to strike, Joyce, as being an astrologer and having to practice and having your own blog versus doing the book and focusing on the book? What was that like for you to juggle both of those worlds?
Well, again, now let's go back to what is the value of being the last degree of Virgo. Virgos love to work. I mean, and I have a Capricorn moon driving me as well. So my pleasure, my joy is my creativity. My sun is in the in the fifth house, so I live to create. This is what I live to breathe and do. And I can't wait to get up in the morning to go to the computer and write some more. I mean, that's how much I love what I do. And it's been a juggle. There have been things in my life that have suffered, like my house. You would never believe a Virgo lives here. In fact, 2 Virgos. You'd never believe it. You have to let some things go, especially during a tense period like this. Again, I go back to the Sabian symbols. The Sabian symbol on the degree of our sun, since we're both born on the same day, has to do with being able to have a laser focus on something And I just keep that focus and let the other things work around it. But it wasn't easy, you're right. I mean, it was a difficult time of having to do a lot of things, and I'm going to have to figure out how that balance is going to proceed into the future. But why I'm doing this, I should mention, is that I got a really clear, I would say intuitive message when I was in Sedona a couple of years ago. And the message I got from Spirit, whispering in my ear, was, you need to get a master's degree in mythology. And at first I took that literally and looked into such, literal master's degree programs in studying mythology. But after a while I started looking at how impractical that would be for me, and I started realizing that that was actually symbolic. Writing fiction is mythology, if you will, in quotation marks. And that was when I really got that I was supposed to make this shift. And it took me a couple years to get my other things that I was in the process of to a state where I could, make a move toward doing this. So it's been a big juggle, but it's been worth it. And I'm sure I will continue to juggle how the mix of my life works between the various writing things and astrology things I'm involved in. But I'm not doing consultations at this point, and I'm no longer the president of my local astrology group, making the leap to fiction possible.
Yeah, I think I could relate to that on some level in terms of having to, figure out how you're going to juggle both worlds. The time is very, very precious and difficult, especially when you have a full-time astrological practice. What was it like for you when you were in the process? I always ask this about in terms of people when they have a creative work. What's it like for you, like, for instance, in the off hours, like when you're sleeping, or you're exercising, or you're just living life, and all of a sudden ideas come to you, or snippets of dialogue come to you. The work becomes this living process. What was that like for you?
It's actually wonderful. That's the part of it I love the most. I mean, I imagine that my head is like got a funnel in the middle of it, connected to sort of all that is and all the ideas out there, and I have very playful and interesting muses that send things down my funnel. And when I get those ideas, I right away write them down so that I don't lose them. And it's like the story is actually almost like told to me, and that's the part of it that I get the biggest kick out of. I get the sort of rudiments of the story, and then as things go along, new pieces of it come in. And you're right. I read the most wonderful book. It's my Bible on creativity, and even though it's pretty old, it came out in the 80s, I recommend it to everybody. It's called Higher Creativity by Herman Reingold, and I cannot remember the second author's name. But at any rate, they talk about how it's at those off times that you just described, Robert, when you're exercising, when you're dreaming, when you're just kind of walking along, puttering in your flower garden. That's when creativity most bubbles up. It's less when you're so focused, although you do get some of it there, but you sometimes get the greatest inspiration bubbling up from your subconscious. And one thing I should mention about the subconscious is that I'm highly intuitive. I have Neptune square my moon, and it is something that I've learned to befriend and not befoe over the years. And I truly believe that most of what I'm drawn to write about just comes through me, that I have this cosmic connection and funnel, and it's a joy and an honor to actually be part of that.
Yeah, amen to that. One other thing, and this is fairly public because you've been posting about this on Facebook, is that your partner, Tim, was not doing well a few months back. He seems to be doing much better now. And yet here you are, you're in the midst of, working on your book and trying to get this all together, and yet having another part of your life, come into play and bleed into play. It seems to me like on some level, and I don't want to trivialize what happened with Tim, but it seems like that's a test of sorts, or a challenge to figure out how to get through and work and stay committed. What was that like for you, Joyce, and how to deal with that and stay focused yet be there for your partner?
It is an act of faith, Robert, every day. Tim's health has been up and down, and I married him knowing that he had a lot of health conditions, and that's all I can say is that I stay aligned in spirit. The positive part is that his recent hospitalization did not happen right at the most critical moments when I couldn't keep moving the book forward. he's as committed as I am for me to develop this new novelist career. So he's cheering me along. And again, it's that focus that I talked about earlier that I have with that last degree of Virgo Sun. I know what's important to me. And the two things that are important to me is my husband and our little family of him, me, and the cat. Of course, an extended family of friends. But that is the most important thing in my life, right beside this writing and this thing I love to do that I truly feel is what I was born to do. And it just requires my being very in the moment. I am learning the power of now, particularly because I've just gone through the period of Pluto being exactly conjunct my moon, and it's just moved off from the third hit. So I very much have been learning about my personal power and trusting that force to be alive there with me every day, and how I have to juggle and get through, doing these two very important things at once. And so far, knock wood, so good. He's doing better.
Excellent. Well, that's great news. You've had some pretty good feedback on Amazon. Is that correct? Are you getting some good hits and maybe some reviews happening there?
Yeah, I am. I'm doing surprisingly well for the first week for a brand new novelist, because I think right now at this stage of the game, I'm still in the process of getting the word out there to a larger audience. But I'm getting sales, and I'm also noticing that there's some spillover sales into some of my astrology books. So that's kind of exciting. So the more you have out there, the more you have an opportunity to sell. And I'm just hoping that this series becomes very beloved. The characters are very fun, and I'm hoping that as the book series goes on, more and more people, even those who aren't in metaphysics, will enjoy it. And I have to comment that one thing I was kind of enthused about, it takes a long time to build to the point, especially when you have Virgo Sun and all those self-doubt issues, to really put yourself out there like I've been doing in the last few years. And I think that it's just an amazing, time of my life, and I just so am excited about the fact that we have these publishing tools now, print on demand and all this stuff that we didn't have sooner. But one other thing we have is we have some new categories for books. And my book is classified as a mystery, but also as visionary and metaphysical fiction. And I don't think that classification has been out there for all that long. So that'll draw two different kinds of audiences, and maybe some that merge together. There will be people that will, like both of those genres. So interesting time to be doing this. We are the change.
Yep, I totally agree. Now, if people want to find out where they can get a copy of the book, obviously they can go to Amazon and look for Crystal Ball, Micki Michaels Mystery. And your website is under construction.
JoyceMason.com.
I'm sorry, what is that, Joyce?
I wanted to say about Amazon that if you go to Amazon and you search for it, be sure to put both author name, Joyce Mason, and Crystal Ball in your search string, because there are a lot of books about literal crystal balls there, and you won't find it right away if you don't add the author name.
Right.
And by the way, my website has been completely redone to celebrate the release of the book and to sort of match the party atmosphere of the crystal ball in the book. So I hope folks will take a look at JoyceMason.com and enjoy some of the unique features that are going on there, including some contests about how you might dress as a crystal ball, dress up kind of as you will be in the future for the crystal ball, and a few other surprises I'll leave folks to discover, because after all, I'm all about mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Joyce, it's been great to have you on the show. And, when they turn this into a movie, we'll have you back on again. How does that sound?
Well, it sounds great. And on my next solar return in 2014, on our mutual solar return time, Neptune's on the midheaven. So one of the things on the website is who would you cast as the characters in the novel. So I hope people who read it will really play that game. We can just forward that to Hollywood when the time is right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for coming on, Joyce. It's been really wonderful having you. And I'll see you over there on Facebook, and best of luck with the book, okay?
Thanks so much, Robert. I've really enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
and that was Joyce Mason, world-renowned astrologer, not just any astrologer. She has her astrological chart up at astrodeans.com. That's a bona fide, if you ask me. And she shares her birthday with yours truly. Crystal Ball, the Micki Michaels Mystery. Check it out if you like that genre. It sounds like a lot of fun. And it sounds like you can also maybe learn a few things while you're at it. And, you know, I really applaud people that can make transitions and shifts in their career. You know, Joyce is, you know, could have stayed on the astrological path and written more books about astrology and done more readings, and she decided to take a diversion and a turn, a left turn, so to speak, and get into fiction. And it's not always an easy thing to do because we become typecast in our own personal realities. And we tend to do what we do well over and over again, sometimes with the fear that if we do something different, we'll not only fail, but we'll lose the people that have supported us along the way in the work that we do. So that's a true artist taking a risk. Okay, let me see who's on hold here. And maybe this is Roy. Let's find out if this is Mr. Tiesler calling in. Hello there.
Hello, Robert.
Hey, is this Roy?
It is.
Well, there you are. Let me give you a bit of an introduction, Roy. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I just wasn't sure if it was you or not. All right, so here, my next guest, you just heard his voice. This is Roy Tiesler, and Roy, I met Roy through the websites, and he enjoyed reading the articles, and we became friends. And then I learned about Roy's story, which we'll hear from Roy personally in a moment or two, and I was absolutely blown away by his story. And I didn't really have any, he told me that he had been a fine artist and a painter and very successful in the whole New York scene. And I was, you know, I wasn't aware of his art or what it looked like. I just knew that he was a really interesting character, and he and I vibed on a personal level. We have some interesting confluences with our charts. And then he started to put things together recently via computer using some computer graphics, and I've been posting them, some of them on my website. I've been reposting them on Facebook. You can go to the show page here, and you can see his latest piece, and they are these really amazing sort of spiritual, multidimensional collages with all kinds of fascinating layers and symbols. And, you know, I just thought it was time to get Roy on the show and expose more people to this new phase of his work, because I think it's really exciting. And I just want to thank you for coming on, Roy.
I want to thank you for having me. This is really going to be a great experience.
So, if you don't mind, and I think we have a certain level of permission, I would love for you to share your story, your personal story, with the people that are listening, and to give them a sense as to what you went through, the apex of your work, the shift and movement out of it, and how and where you are now, and how you got to where you are now. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I can try. It'll be a first for me, but I'll try that out. I grew up in a blue-collar family in Queens, New York, and it wasn't a great childhood. I was kind of mostly an introvert, and you might have seen that in my chart also. I mean, I'm up until about the age of 18. And I held to myself, but I was always interested because of many experiences that I had, not, earth-shattering experiences, but very strong experiences into the metaphysical or the spiritual, that I was always interested in that, and it always took on, it always affected my art in one way or another. And one way of me escaping this, I wouldn't say unhappy childhood, but just a little bit, I don't know, I just wasn't comfortable growing up, put it that way. One way of me escaping was falling into drugs, and that I did. And after school, I worked for a cable television company in Manhattan, and all that time, and deep within, in my head was that, I don't want to do this. I don't want, for me, somehow, I didn't know how to articulate it, but for me, somehow, I knew the system and the whole way that life is. I just didn't want to grow up. I said, who wants to be a grown-up? Look, they're all assholes running around here. And,
right.
And I went so deep with the drugs that I pretty much lost everything. And as things are with me in a lot of ways in my life, I pretty much lost everything within the 24 hours, and I was homeless. And I was homeless. I did some stupid things, ended up in jail. And for a year, I was home, year and a half. It was just touch and go. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I asked for help, and I got it. And I met my beautiful wife. And a year after meeting my beautiful wife, I had an exhibition in Soho, and it was miraculous. I mean, it was just, it blew my mind, the way things unfolded. My wife was setting up a show for her daughter in a gallery that she knew in Soho, and the daughter stepped out. She didn't want to do the show. And Rosemary, my wife, said, Roy, you got to do something. You got to get in. I didn't have any paintings, and it was just like something new for me. And believe it or not, within a week, I had a whole studio set up. I was working for a picture frame shop. The picture frame shop used to be an art supply store. He had all that stuff stored in the basement in storage. He had to get rid of it, and it was like everything for free. And I said, if God doesn't have his hand in this, I don't know, So that's what started me into this with the art, and always underlying my art was that spiritual, mystical, I don't know. And I was happy to learn of you, or to learn actually through you the real importance of astrology, because that was something I was missing. I didn't have much direction in this, and I used to go into these magic shops in New York City and buy books, not knowing what I'm buying, like Aleister Crowley or Israel Regardie, and I would read these books, and I was like, what am I reading? I didn't know, and the missing link to everything was the astrology, which I don't know why I didn't get it. It just was never spelled out for me. And after I got a reading from you, and I was going, and I got interested in reading all your posts, and I found how important that was, how much of a missing link it is, and I don't know. It's just that it just opened up new doors for me. And
Now there's a number of serendipitous connections between you and Rosemary. It sounded like a very casual. This is my wife, and she helped me get here and helped me have this sort of exhibition opportunity fall in my lap. And we don't really have to go into it, but there's some very serendipitous connections with Rosemary, and a very pivotal, transformational person in your life. And I'll just throw this in, that I had a conference, a Skype video conference with Roy and Rosemary, and while we're doing this Skype conference, I saw a halo over, it wasn't quite a halo, but her aura was just glowing while she sat next to Roy, and the energy was, and I caught this, and I sent this to them. Wasn't that something, Roy?
It really was. That was amazing. It was just, Rosemary, at that time when this all went down back in 87, the end of 87, at that time we were both, I was homeless. You couldn't go any further down. The only way was going up. I could have died, but that would have been, a blessing. And Rosemary was at that time going through something very rough too, and her husband of, 17 years or so, was going wacky, and she had to leave him too. And so it was like a mutual thing that happened with us. And Rosemary is very powerful and very, very personable. And when I started doing this with with the art, and I got the show, and I got a show in Soho with a lot of established artists, and I was sitting there, the greenhorn, and in that exhibition, I was the only one that sold, and I was like, what? I mean, you could sell your art. And to me, it was like, it was after the first couple of exhibitions we did, Rosemary said, we can do this ourselves. And so we started gathering artists together, and we started setting up exhibitions in Soho, and we did other places in New York, in the New York area. And then in Europe, since we had Rosemary was at that time working for a German airline, and so we were going back and forth to Germany, Switzerland, Vienna, and setting up exhibitions. And then my art kind of took a back seat in a sense that, how this whole system is. Everything is money. Everything, it boils down to money. In this system, it's the numbers. And we were doing much better setting up exhibitions and exhibiting other artists than we were selling my artwork. And at a point, you can kind of saturate the market. I mean, you can always come up with something new, but at one point it stops, And so I just took that road and said, well, I'll do my exhibitions here and there, but it took a lot of time to do these, to set up shows and to get things all together, and it was a business. It was a 24-hour business, and there was a lot of networking, and so already at that time, say up until like 2000, 2003, I didn't do much more at that time, and we moved up to upstate New York, and I didn't have a studio, and so it was just like another world. And then 9/11 hit, and 9/11 changed a lot. We lost a lot of money in the gallery because we had every exhibition that we set up was usually set up a year to 2 years in advance, and those just disappeared. Nobody wanted to come to the United States, and nobody wanted to come to New York for sure to do any kind of exhibition. So it just it changed our life unexpectedly. I mean, we were blessed that we were able to find this place in upstate New York, but then again, things didn't turn out the way you planned it. And so now we had a handyman special, which I hope to get finished, and within a few years, and it's still not finished. And that helped me too. I taught a lesson. You got to just let things go sometimes. Like your previous guest said, sometimes things around the house suffer, and you wouldn't believe that a Virgo lives here because it's exactly like that here. And we try and keep up with it, but I think life is more important than running around to see whether there's dust on the shelf or not.
Yeah. What was it like, Roy, in the art scene in New York in the 90s? You had Basquiat and Schnabel. Warhol was still alive, I think, in the early part of the 90s. Can you kind of give us an insight into just how cutthroat, dog eat dog, and how intense that world was?
Well, we were always on the peripheral, and but we were right in there when it really started. So our first exhibitions that we set up in Soho, I think it was 89, 88, 89. Soho was a dump, and galleries were just really, really starting to move in there. And you were able to get big spaces for very little money. And at that time, we were also very green with the whole thing, but we kind of then, being down there for so long and meeting so many people and other artists, we kind of got the whole swing of how that art business goes, and it's not the way people think it is, I mean, it's how should I put it? It's just not the way you think it is. When you have the great artists like Schnabel there, showing, I think it was from Leo Castelli Gallery at that time. The foundation of him becoming a great artist is that he pretty much had to sell his soul. I mean, he had to give up everything and get very little for it. And although his paintings probably were selling, or her paintings, whatever artist I'm talking in general, were probably selling for, $200,000-$300,000, they didn't get that, And so we saw the inside of that whole art scene very differently. I mean, we saw it, I think, more, it's romanticized, you know. After a while, people came to the gallery. It got so commercial in a sense that they would look at an artist and say, I wonder if it's a good investment, instead of saying, that's a beautiful piece of art. I'd love to have that hanging in my wall, you know? And they would come in and, well, is it really worth it? You think it's a good investment? And you know, I never, as an artist, I would say, you know, are you stupid? You buy something because you like it, not because if it's a good investment. And that's where that system of money, you know, that whole idea of the numbers just, you know, permeates everything. And it kind of screws it up in a sense. It lets the wind out of your sail when you see how it is. You know, you romanticize artists, and you know he's a painter and he's giving up all this, and then he might sell a painting or two, and you might become successful, and then you find out, well, it doesn't matter what you paint, it's who you know, and you find out, well, most of the people that are coming to look at your art are not looking at it for art, but whether it's a good investment, and that kind of like put, you know, a nail in the coffin of art for me at that time.
Mm-hmm. So you went into hibernation. You went to upstate New York, and you got this property, and you went into hibernation. And ironically, a bear. You had a really interesting experience with a bear yesterday, right?
Oh, last night, yes. Yeah. Well, what's strange is when I mentioned it to Rosemary also this morning, I said, you know, the last time we had a really outstanding experience with a bear was the last time we spoke. Remember, I think when we Skyped, we had said a bear came by the night before, and this happened again this morning, last night. And we have 8-foot sliding doors, and what is it, maybe 5 or 6 feet away from the bed, and he was standing right there, leaning up against the sliding door. Yeah, he was hungry. He was hungry. Did that freak? What did you guys do? Did that freak you out? No, I went out and fed him. I literally went out there and fed him. I told him, "Bear, walk a little bit away." I mean, they're so fast that I was too far away. He would have got me if he wanted to, but he was very respectful, and he walked off, and he went into the shadows for a couple of minutes. He came back out again, and I just threw out a few bird seeds that we have, because they come and eat the bird seeds. And now it's getting cold here, and I'm sure they're trying to find as much as possible before the winter comes. So, right. And then this morning, which was this morning he left his calling card at the front door. A big poop. I mean, he dumped right in front of the front door. And he didn't have to do that. There was nothing there for him. But that was I look at it this way. When we go out in the woods and we find bear poop, we're so excited. We're saying, "Oh, the bear is here." But, you know, other people will say, "Well, he is shit in front of my door." No, I thought it was, you know, it was nice to see that. It was like a calling card for me. Then.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. That is, you know, that's got to be some kind of really interesting omen and symbol on some level. I mean, it's pretty rare when a bear shits on your doorstep. That's incredible, man. Let's talk about where you are now with your art. You started to do some stuff about maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and you started to do a series based on Sophia, and these are kind of multi-dimensional, multi-layered computer graphic stuff. It's a different medium for you. What's it been like working with a computer instead of, you know, oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas?
Yeah, I'll get to that right. I have to add this because the bear, he knocked over the bird feeder can that we had, but he didn't touch anything, and he walked away. That was the most amazing thing. I mean,
what do you infer from that?
He saw me feeding him. There's some kind of intelligence there, right? Why wouldn't he just go right through it? You know, why wouldn't he eat it all? It was right in front of him. Very strange. I'm going to send you a picture of it, and you're going to flip out the way it's sitting on the floor, and you're going to say, this is unbelievable. Anyway, okay. To the art. To the art. Back in 98, or back in 97 was the first time I tried this, the business setting exhibitions up was really taking off, and I didn't have a hell of a lot of time to sit there and paint, for days on end. So, what was much easier was to turn on the computer and mess around with Photoshop or whatever, and see what I can come up with. And at that time, they were just starting to, with the better technology and quality of printing, there was a lot of concern on whether the inks will hold up and this and that, and whether it's actually art, considered art if you create a computer work and then print it out. And about that time, they started to accept it. Now, now computer art is hanging in museums all around the world. Mm-hmm. But then I started to do computer art because it was a lot easier. I didn't have to clean up the studio after a day of painting. I just had to press a button, and I tried that out, and it was received pretty well. And I did. Then I did another series, and that was received well, and I sold a few of those. And I thought, wow, this is great, And actually, when we moved up here, it was my plan to continue. And I thought, well, if I needed a bigger computer, and I needed this and that, and I thought that once I had the right equipment, I would be able to really take off on it. But that's when that September 11th screwed us all up, and then to me it was like, why would I go through all this? Because in my mind now, artwork was now money, and so I thought, well, why would I go through all this for nothing? I can print up a picture or do something and then and stick it in the closet, and then who's going to look at it? We have no way of doing any exhibitions anymore. The art business for us just fell apart. It was a slow death, but it fell apart, and we knew it wasn't going to work out. And so that's the way that went with the past on the computer stuff and what started me off. And now I'm doing websites and graphic design here and there, kind of side jobs. And once in a while I would do something. And I take pictures also, photographs, so I like to do photography, but that's not my love. And after we had that, after I had a reading with you, and I just decided, let me try, and let me just sit down and do something, and I felt good doing it. And of course, because there's a metaphysical, spiritual aspect is always underlying everything in my life, it comes through on the art, and it's just what I have to do. I can't do a duck or geese or deer running through the forest. It's and the way these works popped up were I took these older computer art works, and I manipulated them and layered them and moved this here and there and added, and that's how these new works came out. And the first one that I sent to you, the Angel of Judah, that was an epiphany for me, because the way this one came about and how it evolved, and how all of a sudden, from being something that I was about to give up on, turned out to be, to me, one of my best, and one that started the whole series off. It was just a great experience, and I thought I would start it again, but with a different state of mind, of doing it because I'm doing it, just because in a Zen way, because it makes me happy, not for the money, just for the love of it, and which I never did before. I really never did that except for as a child, and so that's where I am now. And I finished another one yesterday. I posted that on the Facebook, and I put that up on the website. And I don't know. It seems to me like it's it's putting things together in my mind, and it's very hard for me to articulate exactly what it does for me. And I'm just hoping that it does something for those who view it.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about art and painting is that, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And you can look at, and this is one of the things I wanted to, sort of touch with you on when we started to talk about this, is that the paintings themselves can unlock, certain perceptions. They can unlock, our ability to kind of rearrange our neurocircuitry in our brains. They can even act as portals, for us to dive into and explore the symbolic or the multidimensional mystery of what we're seeing in front of us. And that's not something that could be articulated in a few paragraphs, a few sentences, or whatever. And I believe that's the power of art. And if you want to experience that, you can see what Roy is doing on his website, Roy Tiesler, TIESLER.com. And I also have a photo of or JPEG of his latest on the show page here, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So if you're into metaphysical art, multidimensional art, this would be a great place to tap into and start. Somebody actually asked me, how can I, and I know we're coming at this from a process-oriented place, and how it's an integral piece, not necessarily driven by the marketplace. But somebody actually asked me, how can I buy one of these photos or one of these creations that Roy's doing? Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah, I'm working on that. I have a printer that I'm thinking about working with, and that's the most important part, to get it printed. But then, it's work on paper. Do I sell them framed or not framed? There's a little bit of an investment that has to go into all that. What size do I print them out on? So I'm working on that right now. I just slap together what I can with the website just to get some information up there. But in the next week or so, I'm going to have that together, and I'm going to post all that information on the site.
Okay, that's great, because I do think that these are worthy of displaying in the home. These are really profound and magical pieces of art, and I'm glad that Roy has decided to open the doorway to his muses again so that we can experience it and appreciate it. Anything else you want to share here, Roy, while we have a few minutes left?
Well, you nailed it. How you explained my work just a couple of minutes ago. You nailed it. That's exactly it. And I can't explain it myself. I'm not that articulate in all this. But yeah, it's a process trying to step out of the words. To look at these paintings or these. This is what I try and do when I'm making it. To get something more, that there's something curious in there that you kind of have to look at it, And
absolutely, yeah. And if you spend any amount of time looking at these photos or their illustrations, really, the most amazing details begin to emerge through the layers, and that's really kind of the exciting piece, I think, because when you're layering this stuff, you're not always sure how it's going to look, and all of a sudden you see like there's a message, or you see there's a symbol or something that all of a sudden appears where you didn't expect it to appear. And that's kind of the mind-blowing part, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. And it blows my mind, because that's what makes me excited about doing something, because when I step away for whatever, I get a cup of coffee and come back and I say, whoa, what's that? And yeah. It is. That's what I love about doing this type of work now. As a painter, you're kind of limited. You're going to put the paint on the canvas and you can wipe it off, or you have to wait till it dries. But with the computer, you can really explore, and that's really fantastic. Yeah.
Well, Roy, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story, and I want to thank you for also sharing your art again with the world. It's a real gift. And I look forward to see where it goes and, how it impacts people, and I'm just happy to be a part of that process.
And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to explain a bit of it, and I really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Robin.
Okay, you take care, and tell Rosemary I said hello, all right?
I will. So long.
Okay, bye, Roy. That's Roy Tiesler, fine artist and multi-dimensional graphic artist and designer now, with his own series of mind-blowing metaphysical montages. and you can see them at roytiesler.com. He's just getting back into the groove of things. And as he mentioned, he'll be able to have these printed out and for sale. I think these would make great holiday gifts for people that enjoy art and metaphysical and magical art. So thanks again, Roy, for coming on. Speaking of art, our next guest today is an artist. And unlike Roy, who is a visual artist, she is a vocal artist. And I met Julia Free, through Elias Lonsdale. Julia was doing some press and helped me connect with Elias and get him on the show. Many of you are familiar with the dialogue that I had with him a few months back, which was really, really interesting. And turns out that Julia is a pretty talented singer and songwriter, and she's toured Europe with a bunch of different bands and artists and on her own, and I wasn't aware of that. And then I went and listened to some of her music, and really cool stuff. And not only that, but she is a cancer, I hate the word cancer survivor. You know, I hate that phrase. She is a cancer transformer is what she is. And we're going to talk about that and what that meant to her in her life and how important it is. And we're going to talk about her art and her music and any other details that emerge over the course of the next 30 minutes. So let's get with it. Here's Julia Free, all the way from upstate New York. Hey, Julia.
Hello, good afternoon, Robert. How's it going?
Hey, it's going really well. We've got a great show so far. We had Joyce Mason on at the beginning talking about her latest novel. We had Roy just on here talking about his art and the new style and series that are emerging from his consciousness. And now here we are with you. We're going to talk about your music and your health and your healing, the power of healing and all that good stuff. So things are going great. How are you doing?
I'm really well. I feel very blessed. I feel I'm in very good company today. Thank you so much to the two prior guests you had. They're very amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, look, as I said during the beginning of the show, you know, we get into some heavy material here. You know, we like to just, you know, pull back the curtain and, you know, just, you know, see the beast at times. You know, this is what we have to do. But I also really enjoy the affirmation of creation and magic and art, because I think that is the psychic juice, you know, that keeps our hearts open and keeps life on this planet interesting. Because without it, all we are is we're slaves to the ongoing onslaughts of the incarceration of our senses and our spirits. So it's great to have a show like this where we can get into it. Let's talk about you and your art. You've toured Europe both as a solo artist and as a backup vocalist. Who are some of the people that you've worked with, Julia?
Well, I had a band in the early '90s called Free Enterprise, and we did a lot of backup shows for bands like Megadeth and Santana, Steve Vai. Did a recording record with Bob Welch from Fleetwood Mac, and a bunch of other bands actually too, but that were kind of in the scene. We opened up a few times for X. I don't know if you're familiar with the punk rock band X. That was so amazing. So I felt like I was kind of fortunate in that time, just because my music isn't like that. Our music was much more kind of arty rock, and we just ended up getting sandwiched on these really wild shows, which actually helped us to bring our music to a wider audience.
Yeah. So you grew up in Southern California and part of the whole kind of early punk rock scene and skating and all that stuff.
I grew up in Manhattan Beach, and I did a lot of skateboarding. I was a crazy skateboard daredevil girl, and I used to ride a tiny little small, what you call a flexi kickback, and there was all the boys and stuff in the neighborhood, and it was so, my trucks on the skateboard were so loose that nobody would really get on it. And I wasn't the best skateboarder in the place, but I did a lot of downhill slalom courses, and all the rest of the guys, my brothers, were doing, you know, back then it was I don't know if you're familiar with that period in skate history in Venice Beach, you know, Dogtown.
I know quite a bit about it, actually.
Of history.
Yep.
Yeah, so my brothers were all in the Dogtown things, and I just was kind of, doing my own thing. It was just a great experience. I really, really loved skateboarding. I'd get on one now again, but I'm afraid I'll break something.
Oh, I know. My skateboarding days are over, but I used to do the downhill thing myself. We used to have a huge hill where I lived in San Jose called Suncrest. I used to slalom that thing all the time, and now I just shudder.
Exactly. I just think when we're really young, though, there's something really beautiful when we're really young, where we just have this certain fearlessness at a certain period in our life. It's before we come more into our adult level, I think, where we're so fearless.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
So you work with Bob Welch, and I've always thought that the Bob Welch era of Fleetwood Mac were underrated. And everybody looks at Peter Green and the early Fleetwood Mac blues thing, and then they go to Stevie Nicks and Buckingham and that version. But there's this whole story of Fleetwood Mac in the middle with Welch, and he was actually a very gifted songwriter. Wrote some great tunes like Silver Wheels and Hypnotized. And by the time you started working with Bob, he's pretty deep into his troubles, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was fairly deep into his troubles, but he was, well, I mean, he's deceased now, and I'm still very close to his wife. Anyway, he was such an amazing person. That's the thing that really saddens me about the fact that recently, he was supposed to be inducted into the Hall of Fame with Fleetwood Mac, and they just kind of left him out, sort of what you were just speaking about. And he's a really, really, really wonderful person, and he just taught me so much. I mean, I think of some of the things that I do with my music. I mean, he was the first person to teach me things of how to create harmonies and different kinds of padding with synthesizers, and he's just a really wonderful person. He just happened to, have that rough period in his life where he got a little troubled with the drugs. But he did evolve out of that, and got married and had his life was pretty amazing. He had moved to Nashville, and I don't know. I think by the time I met him, he had already done French Kiss, and and we also had things in common because I spent some time living in Paris. So he had done that too. He had left the United States and lived in Paris for several years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ebony Eyes, an absolutely great, pop song with a little bit of a disco undertone to it. Classic stuff. Let's talk about you. One of the things that piqued my interest about you was that you overcame a very debilitating form of cancer, and not only did you overcome it, but there was this very fascinating and intriguing story about how it was also familial, that you were breaking this code or this chain in your present incarnation with this. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, there's 5 women in my family who passed away from ovarian cancer, all under 40. So it's a very, except for my grandmother. So it was my grandmother and my mother and my sister and an auntie and also a sister-in-law too. She wasn't genetically related, but my brother's wife. And then also I got diagnosed with it. And what happened through that process of just, there's just, it's such a profound thing to see, just to have so much loss. I mean, this is for me, like I just grew up with a lot of loss. So it changed my DNA even before I got diagnosed with it. It sort of changed me, and it made me very proactive. And so after my sister got diagnosed, and there's so many women, I decided to get genetic testing done, and I found out that I did have that genetic mutation, which is the BRCA gene, and it's the gene that pretty much creates a lot of the breast cancer and ovarian cancers that you see, especially when you see this very strong hereditary thing that happens, like one after the next, women passing away from it. So I was very proactive about it, and once I got the testing, they told me that, and they said, you should have a radical mastectomy, and you should definitely take out your ovaries. And I was in the process of trying to have a baby, so I was just, there's no way I'm not going to take that approach. But I did just start to be really, really proactive. Like every 5 months, I was having transvaginal ultrasounds, and so I was just very fortunate I got diagnosed so early. They did find it, and long story short, I had to have a hysterectomy, and I had to have a year of chemotherapy. And I just kind of went through that process. And the thing that I think that people don't, well, I don't know, are you familiar with like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, any of her works?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That she came up with, so there's this thing that happens with when you have such a profound brush with death, you do have those stages. And I watched my mother and my sister, especially because I was very close to them, in their deaths, and I watched them going through that too. So these are just the kind of life-altering experiences that really, they're kind of hard to describe in words, but I feel it really has colored me in this lifetime. And I actually feel it's true what you said, that I possibly did break a cycle in that.
Mm-hmm. So you were very keen and open and witnessing what had taken place on a lot of different levels. Do you think that helped prepare you for what you were eventually going to go through?
Well, I think my nature kind of, because you've seen my chart, I've got a pretty optimistic Sagittarian moon, and I think it's my nature. There was this, I remember like when I went for my hysterectomy, I was just like skipping into the hospital, and I was just like, hey, I can handle this. This is just no problem. And I have a nature that's kind of like that, and I do think that's a, back, you kind of get into a denial because it's just so profound. Like by the time I got diagnosed, I'd experienced so much personal loss, so. And every time when you see this kind of loss since you're a young girl, like every time another person dies, that brings up, as people know this about loss, when we have one profound loss and another, it just brings all that back up. So I think I was kind of like a road warrior by then of dealing with this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I just went through it. I just, like anyone does, you just take it one day at a time and you go through it. And I just hoped that because I was proactive that I would have a longer life than my predecessors did.
Right. So I downloaded one of your tracks so we could play it on the air today. It's called "Turn the Soil." I think you did this in 2007? Is that right?
At the end of 2009.
2009. Okay, and I got this because I know you're heavy into gardening and growing stuff, and so I thought this was appropriate. What do you want to share about this track?
Well, I wrote it. It's a bit of a protest song, and obviously taking in the metaphors of the garden, where we need to turn the soil. And I have lots of friends. Like many of my friends are very politicos and really intelligent people, and speaking a lot about some of the things that you unearth on your show. And there's times like sometimes I just get frustrated with that, and I would just like to sort of like me saying to my friends, can we bring like I know the world is so crazy right now, so it takes a lot to bring like a really positive spin on the planet as it is sort of unfolding today. But I think we need to, and so I was just trying to protest, but also at the same time bring some renewing ideas with that song.
And what's the name of the record that this is off of again?
It's called "Turn the Soil."
Not "Turn the Soil," but it's on a selection of other songs from a record, right?
Yeah, that's the title track. That's the title track of the last
That's the
CD
title
I made.
track. Okay. All right. Well, there we go. "Turn the Soil" is the name of the record. "Turn the Soil" is the title track, and Julia Free is the vocalist. Here we go. We'll catch up with Julia on the backside of "Turn the Soil."
All the common man, so we've been
That was really cool.
Right on.
I really
take that
enjoyed
back. That is a version of the song that was recorded in 2007.
Interesting. Great vocals, super hooks, very inspired stuff. What are you doing these days? Are you still working on the music? Any future plans?
Yeah, I'm working on collecting a bunch of songs because I'd like to make another record in the spring. I'm changing my style a little bit. You know, I purchased a bunch of techno electronic kind of equipment and using some boxes and vocal layers. So I'm just
that sounds great. That's
taking it forward a little bit.
It's interesting. You know, I was really at the threshold of the first wave of electronica back in the late 80s and the early 90s, and I used to work for this record company, and we would get all of these rave anthems from this one company out of Florida, which specialized in kind of, you know, cheesy techno music, and we would get some of it from England, and it was fairly popular on the club scene, but not many record stores were actually selling this stuff. And then, lo and behold, you know, about two years ago, all of a sudden, this rave sound and this techno house sound comes back with a vengeance, and you have people like, you know, Rihanna and Kesha and Micki Minaj and all these people singing over rave and techno beats again. It was pretty trippy, to be honest with you, to see how it had come full circle, and now with, you know, the IDM stuff and, you know, the drum and bass sound, it's still you know, still very popular. How do you make your own beats and do your own electronic stuff, or do you work with people?
Well, I've done both actually, but now what I'm going to do for my next record is, I mean, I'm obviously going to work with people to get it recorded, and I'm sure there'll be some influences that happen when I start to actually get it recorded. But this time I bought a bunch of new equipment, and I've just been spending all this time reading manuals and learning how to use the stuff, which is kind of a trick in itself. You know, it's pushing me in a direction that normally I haven't done that. But in the process of doing that, it's been changing my style a little bit. And I've just been, like your prior guest, I like the idea of trying to make some music just for the joy of it, and like a child, and be creative and see, you know, I have all these new things, like new gadgets to work with, and it's pretty fun. And I'm hoping that that's already, you know, it's already changing the sound of music. I have a lot of background in music theory, and, you know, I play all these kinds of keyboards, so I feel like that I'm really skilled with chords and melodies. I think this is new for me to play around with all the textures of electronics.
Mm-hmm. So what are you using? What kind of program are you using to build your beats and loops and all that stuff?
Well, I'm sort of I'm not using the computer. That's just, I mean, I do use a computer. I have a MacBook, but I found it too hard. I have Pro Tools and stuff, but I just can't do it. So I bought myself a Yamaha MOX8, which is a really amazing machine. I'm using like this really cool vocal texture. I don't know if you know these Boss, the V620. I've got several beat boxes. I've been recording the demos on are you familiar with these really amazing new little digital tape players they have? They're called H4N from Zoom.
Yep.
They're really cool. So I'm doing all the pre-production with myself, and then I'm going to go and talk to all my genius friends. Or maybe I'll get lucky and I'll meet a collaborator along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, cool.
I can't do the computer. That's just not my expertise. I'm not the person to record. I can't record myself. I figured out how to use the digital player, but I just think it gets in the way too much of my creativity because I'm just not wired that way.
Right. I remember, you know, back in the day, before all these programs came out, and a lot of them were, you know, built in with all kinds of, you know, pre-recorded loops and samples. Back in the day, you know, you'd have people with their keyboards and these 16-bit samplers, and, sampling music via the keyboard and then triggering it with keys. That was really the way it was done back then. And then all of a sudden, everything was in the box and it was inside the monitor and stuff like that. Is that how you are working with your samples?
Well, I also have I have a PA system, and I also have a xylophone, and I play guitar a little bit too. I've just been I don't know. I just decided to make a start. I got all this stuff, and it's like a kid, right? And it's kind of intimidating in a way, but it's increasing my skills, and it's changing the sound of my music while I'm doing it. And so the MOX8 is it's a huge console, and you find them in major recording studios, and a lot of film composers use them because you can create your own beats from scratch. Although I don't think the drums are the best, because I have these exterior drum boxes that I like better as far as the sounds, but you can record, I've been, just doing kind of song by song and recording the bassist part of the song, and then I play keyboards too, so I'm trying to get myself ready that I could be like a one-girl band. I never really, I've done a lot of solo entertaining, but it's been more just piano and voice and, less sophisticated equipment. So I've just been working like that, and I'm going to do the same thing that I've done before when I recorded with my band, is just because I'll bring the songs in, and they'll be in whatever condition I can get them to, and hopefully collaborate with somebody to, obviously make them better.
Right.
Not necessarily better as far as compositions, but just that part of my talent that I'm not that good at.
Well, it seems to be a theme that is emerging with today's show, because in the first hour, Joyce talked about how she went from being an astrologer and still is, but incorporating fiction, and how that's a different kind of zeitgeist than being an astrologer is, and growing and evolving into kind of this new iteration of her creative expression. Roy doing the same thing, going from oil on canvas into computer-generated graphic design, and even you moving from being into an ensemble or part of an ensemble and getting into more electronic sounds and beats and things like that. So the underlying theme here is about growth and and evolution and mutation even, which I think is really...
When you gave me the reading too, I also took really seriously what you said about experimenting around with chanting and opening up, for me even to do it. I haven't done an interview in a long time on air, and it's really, I'm just really trying to open myself up, because in a strange way I'm kind of a little bit of a scaredy cat. I'm a very more inwardly turned person, so I have to push myself to say, hey, look at me, Julia Free. It's not something that I do naturally. So I thank you so much for the opportunity and for the good advices too.
Yeah, well, I think we're all, we're all in this together, and we're all doing our best to, stay engaged and focused and alive on this planet, and, whatever it takes in order to do that. And I think, again, part of it is the creative process that we have to mutate and evolve. In fact, this video that I saw recently with Daniel Pinchbeck and Alejandro Jodorowsky, one of the most interesting phases or parts of that video, there are two really. The tarot reading between Jodorowsky and Pinchbeck is fascinating, but Pinchbeck says, we have to have a revolution. We have to have a revolution. And Jodorowsky says, no, we have to mutate. That's what he says. We have to mutate. And art's a process of ongoing mutation, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's the thing that the one thing I could say to any of your listeners, if they're dealing with a life-threatening kind of situation in their life, whether it be emotional or mental, or in my case it was very physical, it changes you. It just you become more fearless, and you're more willing to because we have a great life. We're so blessed to be human. Just to have the experience of being a human being is really amazing. And we do get hung up on the day-to-day things that we have to be on this planet. And I'm grateful for my illness, because it really cracked open my heart. That's very, it was really amazing. So we're mutating.
We're glad you're here and your heart is cracked open, and that you're sharing your spirit and your music to the world. let's get you back on when you cook up some of these electronic beats, and let's hear what you're doing in your next musical mutation.
As you would say, in my next iteration.
Yeah, I was going to go there, but we went mutation this time. Yeah. Does that sound cool?
It sounds great, Robert. Thanks so much.
All right, Julia.
Lots of love to all your listeners. Blessings.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, sharing your story and your music, and you take good care of yourself, okay?
You too. Take care. Ciao.
Bye. That's Julia Free, vocalist, artist, Cancer transformer, and mutator. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm sorry, I left the mic on. I apologize for that. And you probably heard me typing on the keyboard. I try not to be disrespectful. I was just trying to track down Ken, our next guest, and I went over to Facebook to see if he was going to be able to make it. And I have to go back over there right now just to see if that is the case. So let me see if I can get some insight here into Ken. It doesn't look that way. So I'm just going to hope that Ken read the message and he can call in the next 30 minutes or so, because I think we got confused here with the times. Let's see, it could be Ken with a reply. No, that's not. It's not Ken. So all right, well, let's do this. Let me play some more music here. Let me play. How about let's play Trouble Man by Susan Deheen. And when I come out of the track, hopefully Ken Goffman, a.k.a. Are You Sirius, will be here to join us. And if not, well, then you're just stuck with me till the end of the show. All right, here is Susan Deheen and Trouble Man.
Trouble Man, don't get in my way. start all over and then again. I've come apart, that's okay. The trouble man, don't get in my way.
The way that track ends so abruptly always catches me off guard. That's Susan Deheen, Trouble Man. Speaking of Trouble Man, here's one of the great merry angsters of the 1990s and beyond, Mr. Are You Serious, Ken Goffman. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Robert, I like that, Merry Angsters. We called our group the Merry Tweaksters in the 80s, but yeah, I think that's even better.
You can use it from here on out. Just, you don't even have to. You don't even have to reference me. How's it going, Ken?
Yeah, things are going pretty good. I'm having a Mondo 2000 experience here with you already before we even start.
Yeah. Are you talking about the chaos and the confusion? Is that what you're referencing?
Exactly. Yep. But I figure, all former Mondoids are time travelers, so I knew we would arrive in the same space on the left side of the galaxy at some point.
So just to give people kind of a quick thumbnail, this is Are You Serious, Ken Goffman, and Are You and Allison Kennedy, a.k.a. Queen Moo, were the brains and the spirit and all the other organs behind Mondo 2000, which was, in my estimation, one of the most important magazines of the latter 20th century. Of course, I'm biased. I was a part of it, but it was way ahead of everything and everybody else at the time, and was also incredibly prophetic in terms of the type of people that it worked with and the content that came through it. And before we get into Mondo, Ken, I just wanted to ask you really quick, what is your take on this Andy Kaufman thing that's happening?
Oh, well, I mean, he was a great performance artist and prankster. I wouldn't put anything past him. So, yeah, the rumor that he might still be alive and the whole thing is some kind of performance piece. It certainly would top the bill, I think, in terms of hoaxes.
Yeah, I would agree, and I wouldn't put it past him either. So let's get into Mondo. How is the Mondo 2000 project going?
Well, it's going pretty well. I've written. It's really a story that starts in 1984 with a magazine called High Frontiers, as you know, and runs through 1997 or 1998. So I've got the early years pretty much completed, and actually I have a co-author, Morgan Russell, and he's working up a lot of the later years, really from the perspective of an outsider, working from the point where he appears and then he disappears to Europe. So he sort of has to approach it from an investigative journalist outlook, which I think makes it sort of interesting. So yeah, we're kind of pushing materials back and forth, and also I've been getting stuff. What's the word I'm looking for? Scanned by Internet Archive, So there should be a tremendous amount of MONDO material, online scans of magazines, early magazines, later magazines, press clippings, advertising brochures, all kinds of peculiar things. So yeah, it's moving along, slow but sure.
That's terrific. I mean, I think that what's ironic about MONDO was that here MONDO was really at the bleeding edge of all the cyber culture and third mind stuff, and yet it for most of the time it never had a website. I mean, it was really kind of mind blowing. And I got there and I said, well, let's build a website, and that was just a really kind of very simple and spare kind of place where people could contact us. It really deserves the kind of portal that I think you guys are building.
Yeah, it needs to be out there. I mean, it should have been out there a long time ago, but this will be very completist. It'll have an awful lot of stuff that nobody has ever seen on it. Also, I mean, in terms of the interviews that I've been conducting with people, and also I've had another person, one or two other people perform some of the interviews. The transcriptions of those will be up. They'll be much more generous. They'll be much more complete than what winds up in the book. So people who are really fanatical or become really fanatical about understanding the MONDO 2000 history will be able to go to the website and really see lots of 10,000, 15,000 word interviews with the participants in the magazine, including Robert Phoenix, who really gave me one of the best interviews. You and Mo covered that bizarre period, the end game. Very emotional, really. Very powerful, very emotional. And kooky and amazing.
The end game was this weird hybrid of like after school, club with Allison and the death of a cult at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
It was like watching Jim Jones and Betty Crocker together. It was weird, man. It was
Jim Jones,
so weird.
Betty Crocker. I never
I'll always remember.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing no Kool-Aid was going around at the time. Yeah, it was pretty insane, very surreal. Well, I mean, the whole experience was very surreal from start to finish. But Queen Mu, Allison, came in 1985, about 7 or 8 months after I'd started High Frontiers, and things proceeded to become more Allison in Wonderland once she was on the scene, and she really was responsible for making a lot of stuff happen and keeping it going.
I think she is one of the most fascinating and important people of the 20th century that nobody knows about.
Yeah, I mean, she's got some great peculiar sort of neo-gonzo anthropology things going on that hopefully someone will get her to speak, because I don't think she's going to sit down and write them. But it's almost beyond description. I mean, some people may know about her theories around tarantula venom and the idea that there's been an artistic cult passed down through the ages in which people smoked tarantula venom, which in the proper dose would cause them not to die or get really ill, but to dance the tarantella and to have visions. So, I mean, that's just one example of dozens of strange theories which may or may not be true. Most of them may not be true at all, but they're so rich in imagination and in detail Even if the ultimate theory isn't true, some of the aspects of it, some of the things she digs up are so amazing that there truly should be a little, couldn't be little actually, a large book of Allison's explorations, Queen Moo's explorations into Gonzo anthropology.
Yeah, she really cultivated, and I think it wasn't just her, but it was you and a lot of the people at MONDO at that time cultivated this really interesting interzone where these cultural mythologies could emerge, and it's like, well, could it be real? I mean, it was like how conspiracy was sort of talked about and explored was that, it may or may not be real, but let's entertain the possibility, and let's not even just entertain it. Let's amplify it into some form of hyperfiction. And I always found that to be really interesting, and actually, in some cases, even more interesting than the truth or the supposed conspiracy itself.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, one of the points was the writing should be really good and entertaining. If the writing is really good and entertaining, and if readers coming to it from a naive point of view could be convinced that it was real or could be confused about whether it was real or not, that was part of the prankster spirit, or what was the word you used? Angster, the angster spirit of the magazine. So, I mean, it just worked on multiple levels all the time. We certainly never made judgments about whether something would be bad journalism or whether it would be somehow immoral to publish something that was where the facts were probably dicey, particularly if it was written with a wink, a nudge and a wink. That was always in there, so that if you were hip enough or clever enough, you would understand that we were playing around with people's reality tunnels, as Robert Anton Wilson used the term. Morgan Russell called it a beribboned letter bomb to the core address of consensus reality, and that's what we were doing at the time. I think we were manifesting a kind of playfulness with content that not only was it not done in magazines, because either you were a satire, maybe it was done by Paul Krasner and the Realist to some extent, but it's certainly something that I don't think you can do very easily today. People don't know how to sort that kind of stuff out. No, it's true. It's true. I mean, that's where that's where MONDO, dissolves into art, because there's this, kind of interesting space where this confluence between what's real and what's not real takes place, and the graphics and everything that Bart did at that time, which was all cutting edge, editing edge stuff, and it was a unique experience unto itself. Ken, I was really shocked in some ways at the response of the piece that emerged on Dangerous Minds not long ago, and the comments that came through, and how scathing and angry they seem to be. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I vaguely remember it. I think that most of the comments went on to I can't remember what the open source oriented page, but yes, I do remember that there were scathing, angry comments. I mean, there was always Richard Cadre, the cyberpunk science fiction writer, said that you have to have an enormous stick up your ass not to appreciate Mondo 2000. But I mean, I think that stick has been going around. They've been chipping off pieces of that stick and giving it to a lot of people. So. And of course, there are always people who are uptight about it, and those are the people who tend to post stuff, tend to post comments. I think generally speaking, a lot of bitchy people seem to tend to post comments on websites. I mean, it's probably a greater percentage than the number of noxiously bitchy people who exist in the world. They sit there. That's their only outlet, probably, would be my guess.
Well, I also don't think that they have the context for Mondo in the time that it existed. And without that context, everything looks, sort of jaded and already done. And I just think that, we're dealing now with people 15, 20 years removed from that actual experience. And I think it's very hard to totally get it and be completely objective unless you were kind of around it a little bit,
I was thinking of the older people who remembered the magazine, but yeah, some of the younger people would probably assume that a lot of things that were very tongue-in-cheek are sincere, and so in that way we're being very limp or lame or something like that when actually it was, we thought it was hilarious at the time, and so did most of our readers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Wired? And Wired was obviously a very commercial attempt to, culturally plagiarize Mondo 2000. Kevin Kelly was up at the Mondo house quite a bit, hanging out, and next thing you know, he's got his own version of what appears to be Mondo, and Wired continues to live on and publish. What kind of impact did that have on people, Mondo at the time, and what do you think Wired's legacy is with all this, Ken?
Well, I mean, to be honest, Mondo was kind of falling apart internally when Wired emerged. So I don't know if it harmed the magazine's chances too much. One thing it did was Mondo was really on the verge of getting some reasonably big computer industry, digital world-oriented advertising. And Wired came along, and it was sort of the safe-as-milk corporate alternative to Mondo 2000, without any politics, without any references to psychedelia and drugs, without any culture, without the hint of anarchism and pranksterism that was found in Mondo 2000. So, Wired was funded by Nicholas Negroponte and a handful of other people who were, pretty starchy sort of folks from the tech culture who either didn't recognize that Mondo 2000 already existed as a digital magazine or thought that the world needed a different digital culture magazine than Mondo 2000. And I mean, certainly Mondo may have had some limits in terms of the level or degree of popularity that it could obtain. I mean, it's sort of like if Captain Beefheart had beat the Beatles to the punch, would millions of people have wound up being Captain Beefheart fans? Probably not. It was probably a little too weird for extreme mass culture popularity. But I think we could have spread certainly further than we did. I'm not sure if Wired was particularly the problem there. I was just talking about the Allison Queen Moo and her tarantula venom theories, which ran in an article about Jim Morrison in one of our issues, following up on the Doors movie by Oliver Stone. Queen Moo wrote this article about Jim Morrison and tarantula venom. And here's something that had nothing whatsoever to do with the rise of digital culture. We had interviews with Daniel Johnston, the outsider musician, acoustic musician from Austin, Texas, who put things out, probably still puts things out on cassette. We had lots of stuff that had nothing whatsoever to do with digital culture. So we were eclectic, and Wired came along and was really focused in this one area, and it was explicitly business friendly. At one point they had a cover in which the title was "Why Viacom Doesn't Suck," And at that time, I can't remember the details, but Viacom was doing a lot of stuff that really sucked very badly. They put Newt Gingrich on the cover and couldn't decide whether he was a friend or a foe. And the title was Friend or Foe. Whereas if you looked at the letters to the editor in Wired, you could see that they were getting comments from very mainstream people who, would fall in line with the ordinary perceptions of republicanism or democratism or ordinary political mainstream realities and so forth. And our letters to the editor were just crazy, in a beautiful way, but definitely nowhere close to the cultural or political center. So, I mean, they were so distinct. Who can say? I mean, Kevin Kelly, Kevin's a friend of mine. I don't have any problems with Kevin, really. It just is what it is.
It's kind of an easy sort of comparison to make in some ways, but Mondo was analog, and Wired was digital. I mean, even though Mondo used a lot of obviously digital equipment to create its content, but Allison never touched a computer. She never even turned a computer on. I mean, this is how Mondo maintained its kind of analog soul, even though it was really kind of up to the eyeballs in Silicon Valley and all these emerging technologies. I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely bizarre contradictions there. Although, I mean, really the web, having a website and all that, it wasn't an issue until around 1994. I quit, actually. I walked out in 1992. There weren't any websites. We were on the well, we were on AOL to some extent. That was it, Jude ran around and was part of some of the hacker bulletin boards and so forth. And that was the whole game back then as far as the internet was concerned. So by the time, that I remember I was writing the book How to Mutate and Take Over the World, I think sometime in late 93 or maybe sometime in 1994, I'd gone into isolation for about 3 weeks, I think at my mom's house in Florida. And when I emerged from isolation, everybody had a website, So, I mean, it was sudden, but and it seems weird that Mondo 2000 wouldn't have had a website, but it was kind of after the reign of Are You Sirius and St. Jude. And I know that you and probably Paul McHenry, another great player in Mondo, probably tried to push for getting a website done, but it just couldn't get done at that point. I mean, there was a core era of Mondo from about 90 to 93, actually starting in very late 89, where we actually almost published 4 magazines a year like we were supposed to. And, it was 3. At first it was 2, but then it was 3 magazines a year, so it was every 4 months instead of every 3 months. After that, it was about once a year until it died.
Yeah. Well, we managed to finally get a website up, and that was around 98, 99. We sold a few back issues and a few other things. It was very Spartan, but there was a URL, and you could go there. It was mondo2000.com. We're about to go to the podcast version of the show. The stream is ending in about 1:30, and I'll be talking to Ken here for a few more minutes. Ken, can you give us one really kind of interesting, juicy early Mondo tale?
Let's see, one really juicy early Mondo tale. I think back to High Frontiers, actually, back in the mid-1980s, 1984, 1985, Lord Knows and Somerset Mamo and myself, Are You Serious? We were sort of the 3 main characters who were running that magazine. And we were taking a lot of psychedelics back then, which actually I didn't do during Mondo. Mondo was sort of a very psychedelic magazine, but pretty well absorbed in the activities of MONDO too much to take major psychedelic journeys. But yeah, we would romp around this place called Tennessee Valley in Mill Valley in Marin County, California. On psychedelics, we would take the trail out to the beach. We called it Reach for the Beach. And it was just long enough so that you could feel like you could feel proud of yourself for making the challenge of going on a major uphill hike while getting off on LSD or mescaline or psilocybin or what have you, but not difficult enough to be impossible. Anyway, we had one particular trip. We had a great trip. We were all coming back down on the trail late-ish at night, very late, I guess, now that I think about it. It was probably just before sunrise. And suddenly we all had the same presentiment that we had slipped into an alternative universe. And we all mentioned Philip Dick, that it was like being in a Dick novel. And we were seriously entertaining the thought that the universe had slightly shifted, that we were in a different place than we had started out in, although things would tend to look the same and feel the same, and we weren't worried that the car that we were returning to would be gone or anything like that. So we got into the car and we drove into the town of Mill Valley. At that time, Mau Mau and myself were both living there, as do I now. And a cute, quaint little town, and sun was just coming up, and I guess we hung out for a little while. I can't remember exactly the circumstance, but at some point it became late enough in the day to go to a burrito shop in Strawberry Village in the Mill Valley area. And we're still talking about whether we had slipped into an alternative universe. And we walked into the burrito shop, and the man standing in front of us was completely naked. We started tittering as one would, and we got our burritos, and we asked the person, "What about that?" And oh yeah, he does that all the time. Which we both lived there. We hadn't seen anything like that. So we were getting pretty convinced that we had slipped into an alternative reality. I got on a payphone. I called Terrence McKenna about it, and he just howled over it for he laughed so hard he cried, and so we went off. We went to a beach in Marin, a really horrible beach that's right across from the jail actually, and we had some beers, and then we had been planning.
Where did you go? Oh no, we lost you. Oh boy. So we lost Ken there. I think I don't know what happened. But that was a great story. That was an absolutely great story. And it's a mystery. And until we can find out, perhaps in another space and time, we don't know how it ends. So with that, I want to thank Joyce Mason and Roy Tiesler and Julia Free and Are You Sirius, a.k.a. Ken Goffman, for being part of the show. And hopefully I can play my ending music here. I'll be back on Monday with the Monday mashup. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to Friday FARcast. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. And thanks again, Are.You, for coming on. I will have you back on at some point in time in the future, and I'll see you all on Monday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.